Okay, in this video, allow me to talk about multiplying and dividing with fractions. Okay, we also may talk about, if we have time, reciprocals. Okay, so let's take a look at multiplying with fractions first. Okay, so let's say we have 2/3 multiplied by 1/2. Okay. Now, when we added, we had to worry about the same common denominator. We wanted to make it the same so we could add them. In this case, we're not. We are just multiplying straight across. Straight across. So it's going to be 2 times 1, and that's going to equal 2. And then we're going to do 3 times 2, and that's going to equal 6. Okay? And then after that, we need to reduce it. And we don't have to, but it's preferred. It's preferable if we reduce it afterwards. Okay, so 2 times 1 is 2, 3 times 2 is 6, so 1/3 times 1/2 is going to equal 6, and 6, when we reduce that, we need to find what's in common between the numerator and the denominator. We need to find the greatest common multiple, or the largest common multiple in this case. And the largest common multiple of the two of these is 2. 2 goes into 6 3 times, and 2 goes into 2 1 time. So then the answer for this would be, we divide this by 2, we divide this by 2, and we get 1/3. And there's the answer. So 2/3 times 1/2 is 1/3. Let's see that again with a different example. So let's take a look at, for example, 5/8, and we times that by 4/5. Okay, 4/5. So when we multiply those together, we're going to have 5 times 4 is 20, and we're going to have 8 times 5, and that's going to equal 40. And then we need to reduce them. All right, so 20 is exactly half of 40. All right, or another way you could say it is 20 goes into 20 1 time, and 20 goes into 40 2 times. So the answer for this, if you're going to reduce them, would be 1/2. And there's the answer. All right, but let's take a look a second, let's pause, and let's look to see if there is an easier way of solving this problem. Okay, so sometimes it's easier, I like to say, to take a step backwards. Okay, instead of just moving forward, 5 times 4 is 20, and 8 times 5 is 40, moving forward, and then after we move forward, we reduce, right? We factor, we factor out the greatest common factor out of both of these to reduce it down to 1/2. Sometimes it's easier to do some factoring at the beginning and then move forward. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at this. So we had 5/8, right? So let's actually erase this and make some more room so things don't get confusing. So let's use a different color too. That's a little bit bright. So let's do this again. So 5, it's still pretty bright, but it's okay. 5/8. All right. What could 5/8? How could we factor out? How could we factor this 5/8? Well, 5 can't factor into anything except 1 times 5. So we leave that as the same. So let's rewrite that as 5. And then what about the 8 though? The 8 could be factored down to 2 times 2 times 2. Okay. And then let's take a look at, what was the other one? 4/5, right? Well, 4/5, again, 5 can't be factored anymore. It's just 5 times 1, so we just leave that as 5. But 2 can be reduced to 2 times 2. And then we have 5. And then we were multiplying straight across, so we multiply it, and we're going to have 2 times 2 over 5. Right there, okay? Now all this right here, this whole thing, can be rewritten as such. You could rewrite the whole thing as, let's see here, these different colors here. You could write the whole thing as 5 times 2 times 2 times 2. Let's extend this. And then you could rewrite this as 5 times 2 times 2, and then 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. And then instead of moving forward, we could start canceling things out. And the reason we can start canceling things out is if we rewrite this, we could rewrite this another way, and I'll show you. So we could rewrite this in this form right here. We could have 5 divided by 5, and then we could have times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Actually, let me just change something here. Instead of, let's just do it this way. Times 2. There we go. Times 2 times 2. All right. So there's actually we need to erase a little bit. Times, it's not it's times 2 like this. All right, and then there'd be 1 on top. And why is there 1 on top? Okay, so we got 5 and 5 right here. So here's a 5, and here's a 2, and here's a 2, and they're right here. And then we have 1 extra 2 down below. Well, 1 extra 2 down below, when there's a 2 down below, there's always going to be a 1 up above, okay? So anyway, what does that leave us? Well, 5 and 5, 5 divided by 5, that equals 1, okay? So let's see. Oops. Use a different color. What was it? Let's see if I can't find the same color. Here it is. There we go. 1. All right. And then these 2's would be 2 divided by 2 is 1. So now that's times 1 times 1, and then times 1/2. All right. Well, 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1 again. And 1 times 1/2 is 1. And if you recall correctly, before we found out, and we can just do it again, we could take this 5/8. All right, let's actually make some room real quick. All right, so we could take this 5/8, and we can times that by 4/5 like we had before. We know that equals 20 over 40, and we know 20 over 40 equals 1/2. So either way, you're going to get to 1/2. Just this tends to be a little bit easier than this way, because when we do it this way, we don't have to think, especially when we get to really, really big numbers. Say this was, in the hundreds or even in the thousands down below, and this was in the hundreds, then finding the greatest common factor would be more difficult. It's easier to factor out. It's easier to factor before you multiply than to multiply and then factor. And then when you do that, you find the lowest term in the end. When you factor at the beginning and then multiply, you'll get to the smallest term, all right, or the lowest term. And as you can see, here is the lowest term as well. So it's just, in my opinion, an easier way of doing things. All right. In the next video, we're going to talk about dividing fractions. We're going to talk about reciprocals and sign of a fraction. All right. See you next video.